How the books that I've read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She's the author of the book After the Crash, none other than Miss Kelly Tuttle. Welcome, Miss Kelly, on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yes, thank you, Daniel, for having me today. My story, it starts with the thunderous clap of metal and the shattering of glass. I was driving home from work when another car pulled out in front of me, and I was unable to stop, and my car collided, T-boned this car, and it was a pretty bad wreck. But I thought I would just shake it off and get back into life and continue working and being a mom and so forth. Went to work the next day, and my colleague said, "Hey, you're not speaking right. You're acting differently. You should see your regular doctor tomorrow." And I said, "Okay." I went to see my regular doctor, was diagnosed with a concussion, and she took me off work for 2 weeks, and I left thinking I would be better after 2 weeks of rest.
Mm.
Six, 6 months later, I'm sorry, not 6 months later, 2 to 3 months later, I'm driving home from work and I fell asleep at the wheel. And
Mm.
and this is how my brain was working. I thought, well, I'll just take a nap in between work and home and not tell my doctor, which you should tell your doctor if you fall asleep at the wheel. And fortunately, shortly after that, I had just lunch with a colleague who was a neurology nurse practitioner. At the time, I was a cardiology nurse practitioner. And she was curious about my recovery, and she asked me how I was doing. And I said, well, I've got this symptom, that symptom. And then the other day I fell asleep at the wheel, but it's okay because I'm taking a nap in between work and home. And my friend said, no, that is not okay. You need to see a physical medicine and rehab doctor, also known as a physiatrist, and get a brain scan. These things I hadn't had done yet. And the physical medicine rehab doctor recognized right away that there was a problem, and she took me off work for 3 months. 2 weeks before going back to work, I was freaking out. I was, what does my brain need to be a good nurse practitioner, a good employee? Um, and I was trying to read books and read websites, and the information was scattered and not really specific to going back to work. So when I decided to write a book from the encouragement of friends, I decided I would write a book that specifically had tools and strategies for someone who has a mild brain injury or concussion to use to go straight to work. And I wanted the book to be super easy to read, filled with things that can be implemented the next day at work. And I also put it on Audible because sometimes after a brain injury, people can't read. And I was one of those people. I had a really hard time with reading. So I also put it on Audible. But that is kind of what led me to write my book, is to help people, empower them to get back to work after a brain injury.
Very well said, Miss Kelly. Very well said indeed. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Thank you for inspiring us. Thank you for empowering us. So today, let's talk about your book itself. Your book is called After the Crash. Can you take us back the moment of impact? What do you remember and what do you only know because someone told you later?
Well, in my car accident, I was the only passenger. I was just the driver. And so there wasn't anybody with me. And all I remember is just slamming on the brakes and trying to get the vehicle to stop before impact. And then the next thing I remembered was the car was turned and the engine was smoking, and couldn't move. I was like stunned. And somebody came to my window and asked if they could help. And I asked them if they could pull my phone out of my purse so I could call my husband. And I had a really hard time talking and moving my fingers. And that was really scary.
Hmm. It's scary indeed. For many survivors, the first days and weeks after the brain injury are long of hospitals, tests, and phases coming in to out of focus. What is your first moment of clear awareness? The first time you understood that something fundamental had changed?
I went back to trying to practice martial arts, and I was so frustrated because I was still in a lot of pain with my neck, and my body wasn't responding to what I was telling it. Like I would tell my foot to step forward, it would step back. I would uh, forget how to do a kata, a series of movements that I had practiced for years and years and years. And so I went home just emotionally frustrated and in tears. And when I got back home, I was like, this is so not like me. This is about 6 weeks after the car accident. And um, I went back and I started reading things that I'd gathered to try to help myself get better, the brain injuries, the concussion symptoms, and so forth. And at that point, I realized I was getting worse and not better. And then shortly after, then there was the falling asleep at the wheel, and then the encouragement of my colleague to see a specialist. And that was what the point where I said to myself that I was going to get the care that I was done trying to get better on my own, and I was going to get the care that I needed and deserved for my brain.
Miss Kelly, when did you first realize that keeping your job and staying in school might be entirely different battle than just surviving?
Well, for me, I am the single income earner for my family. And so it was really important that I continued to work. And I also carried the health benefits for my family. And um, so it was paramount that I kept working and that I didn't lose my job because my family was relying on me. And I also understand, having been in college, that you can't miss a lot of classes or time before you start failing your classes or have to step out until you can go back the next semester or so forth. And both those instances can be have a huge financial impact on the person. And recovery is, it could be within 2 to 3 weeks, or it could take a lifetime. And so there's a lot of uncertainty how well your brain will heal, how long it will take, and so forth. And you just can't sit around waiting for your brain to get better. Otherwise, you're going to lose out on these opportunities that can impact your livelihood. And so that's why I created the book, because there are some strategies and tools that I learned along the way that can help support your brain's function so you can continue to study or go to work while your brain is healing.
Hmm. Well, we salute you for doing that, Miss Kelly, and you did it. You did it. Let's talk about the brain injury is often called invisible disability. You look fine, but your brain is running a marathon just to do what is used to be automatic. How do you navigate the gap between how you look and how you actually function when you return to work?
Well, yeah, I have to be really strategic in what I do throughout the day. Because I wake up, I only have so much energy. I have neurofatigue, and neurofatigue is different from regular fatigue because it's brought on by minimal tasks, and it's not resolved with quality sleep or rest. It's kind of like having an old cell battery. You go to sleep, you sleep 8 hours, 10 hours, but your cell phone battery only recharges to 25 or 50%. And that's all the energy you have for the day. So you have to learn to prioritize what's important to get done during that day and manage your energy throughout the day with pacing and taking breaks, and um, making sure that you don't overdo it or waste your energy on things that aren't important. For example, scrolling on your phone on social media, rather than saving that energy and putting it towards getting that project done at work or at school.
Hmm. Interesting, Miss Kelly. Did you face a moment where your reduced performance was mistaken of a lack of motivation or effort? How do you handle that, or how do you wish it had been handled?
Well, early into my recovery, I found myself frozen in my kitchen, and I was like trapped between a counter full of dirty dishes and a kitchen table piled with paperwork I had to address, and I couldn't move. I couldn't get myself to do the dishes or to face the paperwork, and so I took that episode and I explained it to my speech therapist, who are great to see after a brain injury because they can help you not only with speaking, but with your cognitive functioning. And she explained to me what was happening was that I was overwhelmed. And then she taught me how to take projects and break them down into smaller steps, and then take breaks in between completing these small steps, and that helped me overcome that sense of overwhelm. It helped me get my motivation rolling, and then there is also a difficulty with initiation of tasks after a brain injury, and a lot of this really comes down to is energy in the brain. All of these tasks or abilities are complex processes that occur in our brain, and they take energy. And when the brain is healing, it doesn't really want to spend its energy on complex or processing external sounds or light. It wants to just clean out the dead cells and start rebuilding new connections. And then when the brain injury happens, it disrupts this organelle called the mitochondria in the cell that makes this chemical called ATP. It's used for energy for the brain and the rest of the body, and it's lost its ability to provide enough of that ATP or consistent flow that you're used to. And so your that lack of energy, it just impacts all the processes of the brain and makes things, makes it difficult to get yourself motivated to initiate it. And so people think that they're lazy, or that overwhelmed feeling will make them feel anxious, and so they'll think they have anxiety, and that can be really confusing when it really just comes down to understanding that it's an energy issue, and you need help with supporting the brain so you utilize less energy as you are completing tasks, and knowing that you only have so much energy and you need to prioritize your task for that day.
Hmm. Very well said, Miss Kelly. So let's talk about the battlefield for this kind of injury. The CDC emphasizes that the students may need, or workers may need, everything from informal adjustment from a formal 504 plans or EIPS. What is all about?
Well, I'm not an expert in 504 plans, but I am aware of that. And that's a formal procedure where parents can go into school. I believe it's uh, in high school or below, not college. So I don't think that
Mm-hmm.
501 plans are for college. Um, but don't quote me. And that is a formal process where parents can request accommodations for their child. Like, for example, instead of reading out loud in class, maybe reading in private to the teacher, utilizing audiobooks rather than having to use just textbooks 100%, extra time to complete assignments, being able to take tests like in a separate room that's much more quieter, and given a little bit longer time to complete the test because your cognitive processing does slow down after a concussion while your brain is healing, things like that.
Mm. Thank you for explaining for that, Miss Kelly. So, as an author, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Well, my short term goals is to really boost my podcast. I started it just this year,
Mm.
the mindful return.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. It's the Mindful Return Brain Injury Back to Work, and you can find it on Apple. I also have a YouTube channel where I'm posting it. So that's my short term goal, is to really uh, fill that out, put a lot of content in there, make it available for people who need it. And then my long term goal is just to kind of continue educating and putting the information out there so that nobody's out there trying to navigate this alone. Um, and I just really want to put the information I'm sharing just in really accessible ways of getting the information, whether that's a textbook or an audiobook or on video or a podcast. Um, and just making sure that people know that there's other resources out there that can they can check into, and it's all in one spot, really easy for them to access and get, and then branch off if they need additional information.
Yes. Good luck to your goals, Miss Kelly, and looking forward for more success. And what would be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be like you?
I would say that you are not alone, and there is hope of getting better. And don't try to get better on your own. Seek the support of loved ones, friends, and your health care providers.
Definitely, people. If you need help, please ask for help. And Miss Kelly, can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
I would say Brain Injury Survival Kit by Cheryl Sullivan was definitely a book that helped me with my recovery. And Brain Lash by Gail Denton was really helpful with my recovery and figuring out what I needed and what was going on. And I would also I was very inspired by a book, um, The Brain That Changes Itself by Dioge. I'm probably just butchered that last name, but it's Doidge. It's a really good book. Talks about neuroplasticity. It gives a lot of hope that over time your brain will heal. And then for those listeners who aren't um, necessarily needing inspiration from a brain injury book, a book that has inspired me is The Reading List by Sarah Nisha Adams. I love the book because it reminded me how important books are to people, and inspiring them and supporting them through their life, and the importance of libraries and community.
Well, thank you, Miss Kelly, for the recommended books. For clinicians, how do you treat the souls of a person whose brain, the organ, and that or the organ that generates their very sense of self has been injured?
Definitely. So, some people can have a sense of loss of identity and they can have changes to their personality. And then that leads to needing to really to get to know the new you. And I did this through journaling. I always recommend to my patients journal your symptoms, journal what's going on in your head, and journal if you've noticed a change in your values and your passions. Those type of things will help you get to know the new you and feel less like there's a stranger in your head.
Stranger in your head. Yes. So, Miss Kelly, before we wrap up the discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in sixth season, abstract poetry in third season, and my book 101 review in sixth season as well, comedy 101 fourth season, and my food 101 in sixth season as well, geography 101 love letters, movie 101 review, music 101 are in fifth season, Science 101, Sex 101 in its fourth season, and my baby podcast, Trivia 101, Spiritual Awakening 101, Motivation 101, Mental Health 101, Comedy 101, not Coaching 101, as well as my Bible Verses 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Kelly, if you could sit down with someone just had to their own crash, whether a physical or metaphorical, and whisper one thing to their ear about what lies ahead and what would it be?
It could be a short journey. It could be a long journey of healing. It could be a lot of dark days, but don't do it alone. Reach out to your family, your friends, your healthcare providers. Find a support group, whether that's virtual or in person. Don't do this alone. Get some brain injury books to learn and listen and understand from. And then the thing you will need to do is embrace uncertainty and being comfortable with uncertainty and living each day, day by day, and being in the moment and not worrying about the future. Just be in the present moment and appreciate each day as it comes.
Yes, and indeed. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Miss Kelly. Thank you. So can you please invite our listeners to support your after the crash, your podcast, or whatever, anything you want to promote on Book 101?
If you want to find more information about me, go to my website at kellytuttle.org. Um, and you can find my book at any independent store or your favorite bookstore, and it's also on Audible.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Kelly Tuttle. How about your podcast, Miss Kelly?
And you can follow me on my podcast, The Mindful Return: Brain Injury Back to Work.
Yes, back to work, definitely. So, Miss Kelly, create more books, please, because the world's needed.
Thank you.
Yes. So, I have one more question. Reasonable accommodation under ADA can make the difference between keeping a job and losing it. What accommodations made the biggest difference for you, and how did you advocate for them?
The biggest one was sound counseling headphones and earbuds. Uh, Being able to create an external filter for my brain really helped with um, increasing my ability to focus and concentrate at work in a busy, noisy environment. But for your listeners, if you're interested in finding out about work accommodations that you can investigate or check out, I would recommend going to janask.org, janask.org. That is an industry-wide human resources platform that you can click and check out what reasonable accommodations you can ask from your employer. It's a great site.
Yes. And Miss Kelly Tuttle, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Bodycon people, see you soon. Likewise, Miss Kelly.